Just outside of Casper, Wyoming, there sits a house on the banks of a river. Surrounded by vast fields of grazing cattle, rugged bluffs, with great fishing literally at your doorstep. Crazy Rainbow Lodge is an oasis in the western desert for fly fishers. This ranch-style house is considered home away from home to many anglers the world over. It's fully equipped with no amenity left behind. Just downstream from the main lodge sits what is affectionately known as the River Cabin, a quaint cottage right on the bank of the North Platte River. For those looking for a smaller, quaint, quiet getaway, the River Cabin is for you. Equally outfitted, the River Cabin is perfect for couples and smaller fishing groups alike looking for a true Western getaway. Whichever place you choose to hang your waders, they're both located in prime location to access all that the North Platte has to offer. Be they the quality of fish at the Miracle Mile, the quantity of fish in the Reef, the intimacy of a walk-in wade at Fremont Canyon, or the lure of giant browns in downtown Casper. It's all right here at Crazy Rainbow Lodge and River Cabin. On this Wyoming adventure, we are fishing the North Platte and surrounding rivers in as many different ways possible. We begin with co-owner and good friend Blake Jackson hunting giants on the famous Miracle Mile. You're not going to believe the amount of hours that I've spent with Mr. Jackson on the North Platte in just outside of Casper, Wyoming. It's been an absolute thrill of my lifetime. When we come back, we're going to be live with the man, the myth, and the legend, Blake Jackson.
Ooh, that's a nice sized fish.
I will catch these all day.
That is what you're in for on this episode.
Blake, so good to see you, my friend. It's been a couple months and things are a little crazy these days. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. And yourself?
Oh, can't complain. I have to apologize for I don't have the Colin McEwen backdrop behind me. We're fixing to move house here, so everything's a disaster. But you know what? You got a door and a printer behind you, or a freezer, so it's all good.
Security system, yeah, in the office in the back. So not real pretty backdrop either.
Right. Blake, let's take a look at what you do out of Casper with Ugly Bug Fly Fishing and Crazy Rainbow Lodge. Give us a little bit of an overview of what your operation's all about.
Yeah, we kind of do a little bit of everything. So on the Crazy Rainbow side, we've got the main lodge itself, which will sleep up to 8 people. We can offer meals and kind of the all-inclusive package, or we can make it pretty simple and just rent you out the space sort of thing. We also have a river cabin just downstream of that. So in total, we can house up to 12 guests. But we run a guide staff of, 15, 18 guides. So, a fair number and definitely have many guests that stay in town at a hotel, which from our lodge about 11 miles. So it's not too bad to get out or run back in for dinner or something if you needed to. And then Gray Reef Ranch, that's a big part of our operation also. So we're kind of unique. We with the Wyoming water right laws and the banks being private, bottom of the river technically being private, so anyone can float through it. The ranch allows us, some amenities, private boat ramps. We can avoid some crowds, that sort of thing, stay away from public ramps. So kind of gives us an extra little boost and advantage compared to some other operations. And then little fly shop out at the lodge as well, and then the main fly shop here in downtown Casper. So
now tell me a little bit about the fly shop. I mean, I've been there a number of times. It's a full service fly shop, but it's not only full service in person, but it's also full service online. And when I'm talking full service, I mean from everything from flies to equipment to clothing to whatever you might want, even international travel.
Yeah, that's correct. And in total, I think we're right around 3,600 items. So when you start adding in all the fly tying beads and hooks, that's all listed on our website as well. Obviously, that trend keeps going upwards with more and more folks choosing to shop that way. And some of that's kind of the day and age that we're stuck in right now, not able to get out or able to source things real easily. But but yeah, we take great pride in the shop. We love the fly shop, love the customers, and take great pride in the way it looks and also the products we sell, and we try to carry it all. We've got 9 different fly rod vendors and reels, and most of the time, if you're looking for it, we can get it, or we have it in stock.
You mentioned just a second ago a little bit about the situation that we're all in these days. When I saw you in August, things had turned around quite nicely. How are things going fishing the North Platte and the surrounding tributaries with respect to COVID these days?
Good. We're real fortunate there. Obviously, good old Wyoming. Our population density isn't all that great. We always joke that we've been practicing social distancing here for many, many years, right? And so it definitely had an effect on our operation and definitely moved the needle a little bit to the negative. And then we got extremely busy with just increased number of folks traveling and camping, and there's so much open space and lack of crowds around here that a lot of people kind of were driven to that last summer. And the trend we're kind of seeing is that it might kind of happen going into next year, or this year.
So how are bookings?
Good. Yeah, they're kind of looking up in comparison to years past, with just I think in a weird way. Not that there's many pluses to what we've gone through, but I think it's also made a lot of us evaluate, spending time doing what we love, following our passions, that sort of thing. And we're seeing some of that as well. So.
Last summer when I was fortunate enough to be in Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, shooting the new Fly Fisher, every fly shop, including your own, that we visited was experiencing record years. And record years because of, sales were better. But what's interesting is that fly fishing has really become an absolute must for a lot of people that had it on their bucket list. Are you seeing the same thing in Casper with a lot of people that have wanted to try to start to fly fish to actually get into it? I mean, we're seeing the popularity of the sport just skyrocket.
For sure. I think, I think that there's kind of multiple levels there. I think it was, on people's radar and they had interest in pursuing it, and now they had some time. I also think that there's some barriers to the sport have become easier, right? With online access and YouTube videos, people are feeling more comfortable asking questions and walking into a shop. I also think a lot of folks are realizing that, yes, the fishing is a nice luxury, but it's not the end all be all of going fishing, right?
Right.
The outdoors, the beautiful scenery, the old adage that trout don't live in ugly places, all those things, just getting outside and taking advantage of it, I think is, yes, catching a fish is a big portion of it, but it's not the end all be all for sure.
Right. And part of what I love about your operation, and I don't mean this to sound like I'm blowing smoke, but you've allied yourself with guides in the area that have a true, genuine interest in making sure that experience, whether it's your first time or you've been on the river, 150 times, that experience is unique, fun, and memorable, even if, the fishing isn't fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, there's an element in guiding that obviously you have to have a great connection with the guide, but the learning something from your trip, making you a better angler, and if that means from someone that's never fished to an elite angler, we do some stuff here different than other fisheries, right? And really, that's the cool thing with fishing, is that the learning process really never ends, right? Every fishery is slightly different. We all have little tips and tricks and weird things we say or do, or different messages we deliver, and that's part of the fun.
So we're going to get into a season on the North Platte in a minute. I've been fortunate enough to fish with you, as I said earlier, numerous times. We've done two shows with you in the past, and we've always come during a hopper season. So what I'm going to do right now, if it's okay with you, is I'm going to show just a little bit of what hopper season's really all about. Cool.
Cool.
It's August and it's hopper season on the North Platte, and the tricos are just about to start. As per normal at this time of year, expect to nymph early until either the trico spinnerfall happens or the river starts to warm and midday winds start to blow. The fish will be looking up to eat hoppers later in the day. We're seeing success nymphing early.
Oh, you're right, Blake. You know, at the beginning of this run, Blake said, really watch your indicator because in the faster water, it's going to be a real violent take. And then this slower water set on any little tick. And that's what happened here is that indicator just moved ever so slightly, huh?
Barely bounced, yep.
And with 3X, you can, oh, good fish. With 3X, you can lean in on them. Wow. And I've got the drag cranked.
Good hot fish.
Oh my gosh, what a gorgeous fish. Look at that. All right, let's take a look at this guy. Oh, he's fat. I can barely get my hand around him.
Yeah, good shape.
Not a bad way to start the trip here at Ugly Bug. Great fish. All right, let's get him back.
Now, one of the flies that I love the most fishing hopper season in Wyoming is this Marsh Hopper. It's a fantastic fly. This is what we primarily and I showed the early stage of the day in that video where we were fishing hopper droppers, where during a day you can actually have you start out fishing with a hopper and a dropper, and then you move over to the hoppers automatically. Let's talk a little bit about what the seasons are like with respect to fishing out of the North Platte and what people can expect from ice out right up until freeze up.
Sure. So, we're kind of unique here, being we're a tailwater fishery behind multiple dams. And the ranch access, we actually fish year round here. We definitely have a slower season throughout the winter months, but we've had trips out already this year, and we stay pretty busy early in the spring. It really starts picking up March into February, March, and in our spring season here is primarily a nymph. It's a nymph fishery at that point. We generally see higher fish numbers. An average fish might, be a little larger than what you're going to see later in the summer, but it's almost all nymph fishing, anywhere between, 4 and 9 feet deep. And then, come July, we start moving into a little bit of the dry fly action. I mean, often we can get some blue wing stuff in May and June, but as far as consistent sort of dry fly action, that really starts picking up in July when we start seeing, traditionally seeing some PMDs and yellow sallies, and then along with that come the grasshopper thing. And Wyoming can be unique in a way with the grasshopper populations we have here. Obviously, Wyoming is kind of known a high desert climate, right? So in the midsummer, often the desert thing kind of works to our advantage. Those grasshoppers move closer to the riverbanks because that's where more forage is for them, and stay out of the drier prairie ground. And when you get, good hoppers on the banks and a steady Wyoming wind, it usually leads to some great hopper fishing.
When we were there, the hopper fishing, according to you, was poor. You had a really robust beginning of the season, and things got really hot. Right. Yeah. And the hoppers, according to you, died off, but we still fished hoppers all the time. This is a Dave's hopper, which was a fantastic pattern that we threw a lot of, with a dropper on as well. But I got to tell you, Blake, when you live where you live and you experience what you experience, and me being a Canadian coming and fishing hoppers, when it's poor, it was still absolutely lights out. I mean, it was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, we're very fortunate, very blessed to have a great fishery, and somewhat unique. Our fish, aren't the most aggressive on a dry fly usually, but when they do get on them, boy, do they get on them, and that can really help the process.
Yeah, one of the cool things about where you fish, especially on the Gray Reef Ranch section of what you've got is that you're able to get out and walk and wade because you own the property. But that reef section is fantastic, and so many others are fantastic for cutthroat. And when you talk about, things slowing down in the summertime, and fish behaving differently, the cutthroats are still being cutthroat, and they're still doing their thing, right?
Totally. You got to love cutthroat. They're usually a little more eager to eat a dry fly. They're, the warmer water temps don't really slow them down. They actually kind of like it more. So we do see an uptick in the number of cutthroat that we catch through the summer months, just because we're dry fly fishing a little more.
Right. I've got a short clip of a cutthroat that we caught on the reef. I'm going to play it. Okay.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh, what a fish.
Gorgeous.
Did you see that eat?
Cool.
Super slow, big fish. Is it a brown?
I think it's a cutty.
Oh yeah, big cutthroat. Nice.
I like
Awesome work.
Those fine spot cutthroat are really fantastic to eat. Can you talk to people a little bit about how they different from rainbows and browns, and how they do actually crush grasshoppers?
Yeah, so they're just a unique fish. Some people, depending on who you listen to, right, will say at times they're not quite as smart, so they're not quite as wary of, osprey, eagles, that sort of thing. I think genetically they're just more in tune to eat a dry fly and feed off the surface. And then, when they do eat, they have this kind of lazy, kind of slow motion. Often you'll see their mouth open and they'll move super slow. To wait on a hook set, not rush a hook set, and let the fish actually close its mouth and kind of slow things down. It can be kind of difficult, but it's also kind of fun to see a fish, eat in that style versus kind of slap it. Although we do have, cutthroat that'll come up here and smash it. And we've got both the fine spot Snake River. We also have some Bear River cutthroat in the system, which is kind of a unique little bonus as well.
Yeah, those Bear River cutthroat are extremely rare. And what's fun about it is that, we've done 2 shows with you, and each episode we've managed to hook and land and release a Bear River cutthroat. And they're just, cutthroat are beautiful no matter what species they are, but they're a little bit more aggressive, and they're, to catch a rare fish like that is an absolute treat.
Yeah, definitely not the norm, but it's worked out for us for sure.
Absolutely. So what's the population of cutthroat versus browns, hybrids, and rainbows in the North Platte?
Yeah, so it kind of depends year to year, depending on, sections they really look at, but we hover somewhere right around 90-95% rainbow trout. And then a lot of kind of hybrid stuff going in within that. Traditionally, or years ago, the river was much more cutthroat based. And over time, the rainbows have kind of spawned them out and lowered the percentage of the gene pool as the true cutthroat. So very high rainbow population. And then, depending on the stretch, again, somewhere between 1% and 5% brown trout, and then, 2 to 3% cutthroat. So seeing, browns and cutthroats is kind of a rarity here. We do see them, and we see some real trophy sized ones. But not necessarily the norm. The norm is a little more on the rainbow trout side.
Right. Now, we know the state of Idaho has a bounty on rainbow trout and hybrids. Does Wyoming do anything like that at all?
Not on our watersheds, no. There's some talk and some movement on the western end of the state. But where we're at, we embrace the rainbow trout, the whole crazy rainbow thing, right, with the shop or with the guide service. They really thrive in our watersheds and in the conditions that we have here. It's our primary go-to sort of fish.
So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to move I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the conservation work that you're doing in and around Casper. And then I want to move to a different opportunity of fly fishing that you offer before we move back to trout, because we actually had a fantastic and unbelievable trip here with you last year. And you've expanded things. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, let's talk about what you're doing personally with respect to conservation in the area, the work you've done with Fremont Canyon and things like that.
Yeah. So I mean, we've done some stuff kind of internally with, removing cattle off of the banks on the ranch, helping our neighbor with some fencing and water wells and that sort of stuff as well to remove cattle off of the riverbank through most of their ranch. But I think like any good steward of fishing, the resource is really the gem, right? So I'm heavily involved, and it's not just me. There's a huge community in Casper that take part in multiple different things, right? We have a great conservation group here that has purchased and acquired and sought some water rights to make the Fremont Canyon stretch of the river healthier and preserve it and allow for future generations to have access on it and keep fishing it. Casper actually has the largest gathering of national public lands volunteers in the country. So we get, hundreds and hundreds of people and private business entities and all kinds of stuff to help pick up, clean up, remove trash. And we have a really cool thing here through town called the Platte River Revival, Platte River Restoration. That's like most urban sort of city, we're somewhat unique, somewhat like Calgary, not the size of that, but as far as having a blue ribbon fishery that runs through the middle of a town, it has allowed us, or the city of Casper has really put an important cleanup project in place. And so we're about halfway through the entire project, but it's everything from restructuring the riverbanks to taking out noxious weeds, building rock weirs. It's a giant undertaking, and it's really cool to see how the river's responding, how much healthier the fishery is, and just the general enjoyment of folks here in Casper, right? There's walking trails and parks, and there's just more and more people using the river for enjoyment and pleasure and homes.
Even the water park, like I love fishing the water park. That's some fantastic whitewater. You sure have to dodge some kayakers here and there, but it's one of those things that, the town has invested in the river. They've built their existence, a lot of their existence around the Platte running right through town.
Totally correct. Yeah. And it's neat. I've kind of been involved with it long enough now to kind of see some of the rewards and see it really, increasing the number of folks that are living in Casper and enjoying Casper because of it. So a unique thing to witness.
And what's the fishery doing these days, based on all this conservation work that you and others have been doing? Fisheries holding strong. It's we're fortunate here. We have so much food in our water systems that the fish grow quick, pack on the pounds sort of thing. We can grow some real trophy sized fish here. Part of that's kind of the ease and pace of the river allows for those fish to get a couple years older than they would on some other fisheries. But a lot of it has to do with the food source and nice cool water and, all those things that trout look for. Well, it's not just trout that you have either. I mean, you've got a lot of different fisheries around Casper. Last season, you and I had the opportunity to hit Alcova Reservoir and do something that was completely unique to me, catching common carp and mirror carp on dry flies. Let's take a look.
I never thought that I would be excited to catch carp, but here in central Wyoming, this is unbelievable. We're the only ones on the lake. It's slick calm, there's fish everywhere, and it's just like fishing saltwater. There really isn't any difference, just the salinity and species.
Good. Strip. Strip. Easy. Strip. Got him. Well done.
Sweet. Oh, these things are heavy. He ate the dropper.
Yeah.
What's the dropper, Blake?
That dropper is just a little white bugger. They eat it as a little minnow or
Yeah, a little beadhead too, right?
yeah, little teeny beadhead bugger.
I haven't even seen this thing yet. There's the leader.
Yeah, on a 5-weight, it's a chore. And they'll come up next to the boat and roll and generally take off one, at least one more time.
Okay. This is crazy. We should have put a GPS on the boat to see how far it's towing us.
Right.
I haven't even seen it yet, Blake.
No, I saw a slight glimpse of the tail, and that's been it.
This is just solid.
It's raw weight.
It's raw weight.
Yep.
And as soon as you put a hook into one of these fish, it's such a completely different feeling. And it's a patience game, right? You get to the point where you want to get them in and, you can't rush it.
Yeah. Normally I wouldn't be chasing them on a 5-weight either, but
No.
but
We
it
are here
does,
fishing trout.
it does make it fun though. Nicely done.
Sweet, that is a huge mirror carp.
Hard to get out of the net.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look at that. 12-pound mirror carp. All right. My carpy friend, you're ready to go. Ah, the golden bonefish, huh?
Yeah, that was actually Pathfinder Reservoir, not Alcova. But
Oh, was it?
yeah, really close together. I love chasing carp. I've totally been been obsessed with them for a number of years now, and it just seems to get further and further every year. So anyone that's willing to drive a flats boat to central Wyoming to chase one specific weird species, you can tell that I'm hooked on it.
Well, the fact that you can catch giants in inches of water and that you see them tailing and mudding, and it's literally just like fishing saltwater in the flats.
It is. It's obviously it's a ride. It's also just great practice if you're in saltwater fishing. It's a great kind of pregame, get ready, figure it out, and helps kind of eliminate some of the jitters. Primarily because it's all sight fishing based. You're trying to shoot for a specific target, and it really mimics bone fishing, red fishing. It's right in there.
And in my own defense, I had no idea that we were going to do that. I brought 5 and 6 weight. I really should have. That poor guy. I really should have tagged him with an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, 7, 8 weights kind of are normal, but that's also one fun thing with carp, right? Is you're to photograph them, to stress them a little bit really isn't kind
They're
of
pretty hardy.
right?
They're super hardy.
So it's not that big of a deal. Yeah.
All right. So LP. In California, thinking about moving to Wyoming, Casper or Sheridan? Kids moved out. Looks like LP's in a good spot. What do you suggest?
Yeah.
They're both fantastic fisheries.
You're not the only one looking to move from California. Seems like there's a number. They're both fantastic fisheries and both beautiful places, right? Both towns at the base of mountain ranges, and you can't really go wrong with that. Casper's a little bigger than Sheridan. Sheridan's a little closer to a slightly larger city in Billings. But pluses and minuses to both. Feel free to call a shop. I'd be glad to help you out with even more info on it. Affordable housing is probably a little better in Casper than it is in Sheridan. But beyond that, I don't think you can go wrong either direction.
Our good friend Jim, Spring Garden Hackle, Egg and Leech Hatch, top notch on the reef. What do you say?
He's got it dialed. Yeah, they surely are, especially in the spring. The spring months. That's a lot of what we see. We're somewhat unique. The majority of our fishery, especially kind of on the upper 30 miles of the river, is primarily mud bottom, bentonite bottom. So it really lends itself well to growing earthworms, growing what we call a rockworm, a caddis larva, but also leeches, crawfish. And one reason our fish can gain weight, pretty rapidly, right? They have a year-round food source on pretty large items. And so, yeah, you're spot on. In the later months, come after the hopper thing in the summer and kind of PMD thing, and we get back into blue wings, in midges, obviously the good old sand longworms and leeches and eggs are kind of always part of the diet, but it does turn a little more blue wing and midge in the fall months, and obviously a lot of fish chasing streamers too, which can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we've fished August and September and even into October when we've been shooting with you. And one of the things I've learned in all the days we've been on the Platte is that, in the fall, there's a lot of moss.
Yep.
You're not gonna mince words on this. It's a moss factory, and if you let it make you get frustrated, it's going to make you get frustrated. But the cool thing about what you just said is that moss is where that food lives. That's the grocery store for these trout. So if you can get it amongst the moss, you always get things falling out of that junk. And yeah, you may have to clean your flies off every once in a while, but you know what? That's fishing, and that's where those big ones live.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, the moss can be frustrating, but there's some advantages to it as well. Like especially when we get the hoppers, those big moss beds create more current seams, right? And those fish will sit right on the edge. Yeah, you'll lose a few fish because they'll turn into the moss, but if you hook more fish because of the way the moss is laid up and you kind of know where to fish, it can work to your advantage as well. But you're spot on with it provides a food source, it provides protection. There's a lot of benefits to some of that moss, and it's honestly something that really every Western fishery or any fishery for that matter deals with, and it's part of the equation that time of year.
And for those that may be getting into fishing hoppers, it's a target, right? Because that as soon as that fly passes past the moss onto that V that creates on every patch, that fish is going to be sitting right there, and that's your money zone, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of forget that fish inherently, if they got the option to be lazy, they choose to be lazy, right? And that moss provides a protection source. So they're often sitting up and underneath it or right on the edge of it, and then they'll duck out into that current seam and eat, and then duck back in for protection. And you're spot on. We find a lot of fish off of those inside horseshoes or right below, a moss seam. They love it.
Josh Reed asks, are you catching much of an age class nowadays? He's never caught a small fish on the North Platte.
Yeah, we've actually seen an uptick in age class fish. And the way the river lays out is a little unique as well. Closer to town, the fish numbers actually go up, but the kind of rearing section, younger fish usually live a little closer to town. And then the reef stretch, which, for those not familiar, is kind of the upper 10, 12 miles of the river. Generally, those are more spawning age class sort of fish and above.
Right.
Now, the real jumbo fish we often see closer to town, and the reason they're closer to town is because they're down there eating those little 5-inch rainbows as a food source. So there's kind of some give and take depending on the sections. But if you primarily just fish the upper 10, 12 miles, rarely will you see a fish under 16 inches. They're there, and at times a year you'll see more of them, but numbers of a smaller age class fish definitely go up when you get closer to the town of Casper. Right.
Mike O'Connor, is a Miracle Mile section readily accessible spring, summer, and fall?
Yes, it's one of the beauties of the Miracle Mile section is almost all of it is Bureau of Reclamation land. There's multiple camping locations out there. It is readily accessible. There is a unique feature around here, and it's something we deal with of good old bentonite mud. Anyone that's familiar with bentonite, when it gets wet, it can get slippery and turn into kind of a roller skating sort of rink. And it's the sort of mud that'll clog up the tread on your tires and make it extremely difficult. So there are multiple people that, tow campers out there and fish on their own and hire us and do whatever. But sometimes you want to pay attention to the weather forecast. And if we're going to get a heavy rain, you might want to tuck tail and get out of there before it gets too nasty or you get stuck for a few days.
that first clip that we showed was actually a Miracle Mile fish, and it's a high quality, low quantity game, and you got to know that going in, that you're not going to rope a ton of fish, but you have an opportunity at releasing an absolute stud. I mean, what did you tell me that the average size on the mile for rainbows is 17 inches?
Yeah, and depending on when you're there, there's a lot of days that I swear that average is more like 19, right? But
Right. Yeah.
The mile's somewhat unique. It gets a bit of an ebb and flow as to fish size, and the real reason is the river there dumps into Pathfinder Reservoir. So often the fish we're seeing in the river section are actually moving to and from the river and the reservoir. So times we'll get big pushes of fish out of the reservoir. That's when average fish number kind of goes, or fish size kind of goes up. And when those pushes of fish aren't happening, it seems to taper off a little bit.
Well, how big was that brown that Austin caught at the Chalk Bluffs there just before we arrived? That was a 30 or 32 inch brown trout, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was right at 30, or just maybe a hair shy, but it holds some real world class sort of trout, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I appreciate about your guides and the philosophy that you impart on them is that if something isn't working, let's make a change, right? You've got the ability where you're located to pick up and shuttle. So when we fished the Miracle Mile, we decided then the next day we were going to go and fish the reef for a little bit. Whatever, we had fun. It was a great time. But then you said, hey, I have an idea. Let's go fish Fremont. And if you've never fished Fremont Canyon, it is an absolutely gorgeous place. And you've got a wonderful opportunity to catch fish on dry flies. It didn't work for us, but we caught some big fish in a small stream. Check this out.
Oh my gosh, it's going all over the pool. Nice fish, big rainbow.
Fish.
So we started nymphing the tail of this run and didn't pull anything out. So I started throwing on Blake's recommendation to come up parallel with this rock shelf and throw it up into the white water and let it come down, and 2 drifts, and there you go. Oh my gosh, these head shakes. And this is a big fish, Blake.
Good fish.
You want me to
Really
walk you
good
down to that
fish.
softer water?
Yeah, about right there is perfect. We can keep them out of this moss. Laying them right out here in front of me will be ideal.
Big wild rainbows. These are just perfect, perfect, perfect. Nice, good job. All right, let's take a look at this guy. Strong fish, hey Blake?
Gorgeous fish, yeah, awesome.
Whoop, yeah, I know. Almost
Spunky.
can't even get my hand around.
Yeah.
Awesome fish. On the MacGruber,
Yep.
good fly, awesome fight.
As the day warms up, we make the decision to pack it up and hit the famous section of the North Platte called the Reef. That's it. That's the MacGruber. That's the one that did it all. That fly's pretty special to you, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is for sure. I love that clip. It's hard not to like slow motion fish releases, right? Or something like that. It's just awesome. So, yeah, the MacGruber bug. It's one I've had kind of in my quiver for years, and keeps kind of gaining in popularity and is commercially tied and that sort of thing. We sell a lot of them here in the shop,
But that's one of your personal flies that you've developed over time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I came up with it years and years ago, and a lot of people ask about the name, and it was all kind of a spoof and a joke off of the very first SNL skit, right? So I actually tried to tie that primarily as a midge pattern, and it really didn't work all that great as a midge in the size that I initially started with. So it works much better as a blue wing, and in the smaller sizes it works really well as a midge. And so it's expanded into 8 different colors, and with a bead and with a foam back and without kind of the original one. So a neat bug. Yeah,
it lights up for sure. We've got another question from Jim from Colorado. How far down is the ice bank from Reef? Open to Lusby yet?
No. If we're talking as we sit right now, no, there is ice at a run we call Wind Island, which is about half of the way through Gray Reef Ranch. You hit an ice jam. So we are fishing, kind of doing the whole lap program, right? We do floating about 3 miles and taking out and going back up and doing it twice in a day. Obviously something kind of unique to us that we can do that. But unfortunately, the public ramp, which would be Lusby, the takeout ramp, there's ice above it. You can't get to it right now.
Peter Fitz, do you guys get any other terrestrial action other than hoppers?
Yes, we surely do. We've always kind of got the consistent ants, beetles, that sort of thing that takes place. Obviously, the hopper thing, people can see them. They kind of know it's that time of year. But if there's a fish up feeding, in my opinion, especially if they're somewhat spooky during terrestrial season, usually a small beetle or a parachute ant will usually they'll eat that before they'll eat the hopper at times. Yeah.
And when you're fishing these terrestrials, it's a game of inches, isn't it? You really need to put that fly on either the seam or on the bank. Talk to me a little bit about what you need to do before you come and fish with your guys in order to maximize your success.
Yeah, I mean, I think having some basic knowledge, skills is somewhat helpful, but by all means not required, right? We start a lot of people who've never touched a fly rod and they get in a boat and we do the whole training process. But generally, if the angler's ability allows it, I really try to get folks to pay attention to kind of setting up how we're going to approach a bank. And a lot of our fish sitting below those kind of kick out seams off of moss banks or below a tree that is creating a current seam to kind of prep for that as we roll into it, right? And throw a cast in pretty tight. And then my preference is to actually throw a cast beyond the seam and then mend the slack or create slack in your line, actively pulling the bug back into the seam. I've found that it's really tough to be deadly accurate and throw it right on the money, but throwing it a few inches beyond and pulling it back into the appropriate current seam seems to work really well for what we do. And then from there, most of our fish, especially on the hopper, they're generally eating it on a dead drift. Every now and then we'll get one to chase it on the skate or on the twitch, but most of the time they're going to eat it on the dead drift. So if we get a good mend behind it and let it float through that seam and let it run, often they'll tattoo it, and often it'll pull them off of that obstruction and they'll follow it downriver and actually eat, fish facing downstream instead of upstream, which is
and that's super cool. That's super cool. Anytime you can see that,
awesome to see. Yeah. Tough not to set a little quick at times, right? but that's part of the fun.
That's part of the fun. And the cool thing I like about it is that, as the angler, you're always watching your fly. Like you never take your eyes off that bug, because Murphy's Law says as soon as you remove your eyes off that terrestrial, it's going to get crushed and you're going to miss it. So Blake's guides are always one step ahead, saying, always in your ear, saying, okay, you've got this coming up, you've got this coming up, you've got this coming up. So when you know that when you pull your back cast, you know what to look for and you know where to place it.
Yeah. And that's, the norm is that they're on the seam. I think if I remember right, a couple of years ago, we had fish out on a flat.
Yeah.
Super heavy wind, and it was blowing those hoppers 30, 40 feet off the bank. And the fish were out in the center of the river feeding in kind of a foam line. But, kind of shocking to see, but it worked to our advantage. We were able to pick quite a few fish off.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Josh Reed asks, Blake, do you still do a cast and blast trip?
We do still offer cast and blast trips. Yep. So there's some pheasant hunting, chucker hunting, that sort of thing that takes place up here on Gray Reef Ranch. We don't necessarily operate the bird hunting stuff anymore. A gentleman named Bob Borden has kind of taken all that over, but we still work in conjunction with Bob. We'd be happy to help you set up a trip and organize, coordinate, that sort of thing to make it work.
Super cool. One of the things that I also love about fishing North Platte out of Casper is you can choose your poison. If you want numbers, if you want adventure, if you want big fish, you can choose it. And we fished with one of your fantastic guides named Forrest Luton. And I made the decision, stupid as it is, as a television producer and host, to go unicorn hunting, because we need fish for TV, right? And if you're going unicorn hunting, it may not happen. But what you can do through town, as you alluded to, with those big fish eating those little fry and those smolt, is go unicorn hunting right through town, the proper town of Casper, can't you?
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's either a hero or zero sort of thing, right? It can either be a total home run and or at times it can be relatively slow, but it's an awesome opportunity, a lot of fun to do, and we're really enjoy taking the opportunity to do it. Right, often people are a little more focused on trying to catch numbers of fish, but we always try to approach a day pretty upfront, right? We try to find out what is it you're in, what is it, why are you hiring us, right? What do you really want out of this trip? And I think that's a valuable thing, because a lot of people, it's purely education, right? Or some people, it's, I want my son to catch his first trout on a fly rod, or my dad or grandpa or whatever it may be. And we can really kind of customize a trip to anyone's wants or needs.
So we decided to go unicorn hunting through Casper. Here's a short clip of how it worked out. And I'll, spoiler alert, we didn't get that big 30-inch brown, but we gave it our best shot.
Yeah.
We're going to switch gears and go to streamers using a sink tip and fishing the same kind of water off the banks and in the quicker riffles. But we'll try some different speeds and techniques with our streamer fishing. We'll start off probably with some quick strips and see if that can produce a big brown.
So, Forrest, how do you want me to fish this?
So what we're going to do, Mark, is we're going to try to get that streamer as close to the bank as we can. A lot of these big fish are sitting right on the bank, and usually you'll get them on the first or second strip. And what we're going to do is, as soon as you hit the bank, it's going to be a quick strip off the bank, little pause, quick strip, and you're trying to get that big brown predatory instincts to kick in and think that there's a little fish in his area. So that's what we're gonna do.
Nice rainbow. Streamer fishing is fun. It's work. It's not the prettiest fly fishing in the world, but it is an effective way to catch great fish like that rainbow. Sweet fish, Forrest. So the cadence is important, right? So it was a strip, pause, and as soon as I started again, that fish ate. And he was there with a strip set. Boom. Great little rainbow trout.
No, we actually did catch bigger fish than that, but I'm going to save that for the TV show, obviously. This was one of the fly patterns that we used that was very effective, a rusty trombone. And one of my favorite foul weather big brown trout flies is acrylics as well. These things are absolutely fantastic. They're short fly, an inch and a half, and they put a clinic on both flies put a clinic on streamer fishing for big fish.
Yeah, they're both great patterns. We use the hell out of them here. We love them. They're really a go-to staple. The acrylics, a lot of people I think kind of forget about that streamer in the grand scheme of streamers, right? Because it's not articulated, but the way it fishes in different light, the color schemes in which you can tie it, and it's one of those great guide flies because it's a relatively easy streamer to tie.
Absolutely. So you've got a new guide to you this year named Austin, and I was completely impressed by this young man. I fished with him, I think, a day or two, and he is one of the fishiest guides I think I've ever seen. Tell me a little bit about Austin Hop.
Yeah, he's an ace. So we're blessed to have him. Take great pride in the fact that he's working for us. He was a competitor's, head guide and decided to come over our direction. And, great work ethic. Like you said, he's super fishy, super professional, and he knows his stuff. And, he's been great to have around.
In the grand scheme of unicorn hunting, you and Austin approached us and said, "Hey, what would you think about getting off the North Platte? We were able to fish a section of the Bighorn starting at Wedding of the Waters. Would you be up to that kind of adventure?" And I mean, Blake, you know me, I'm all about it, right?
Yeah, if you'll go carp fishing with me, you're willing to go to.
So we jumped in the truck at like 4:30 in the morning, got to the put in around 6:30, and we had an absolutely fantastic day. And one of the things that's great about good guides like Austin is that they can decipher patterns super quick, much faster than I ever could. And he, after 2 fish, realized that what we were doing, where we were catching fish, is on the drop of any kind of plunge. So it would be, 4 to 6 inches of water, and then it would drop down. And those fish were nosed right up, literally right up against that drop. So if you didn't have a tungsten bead nymph or something that would drop fast, your flies would pass over the fish, right? So he made adjustments right away to allow us to have unbelievable success. And I mean, I can't talk enough about this kid, how fantastic of a guide he is. But it's those little nuances that can really make a day a hero or zero, as you say.
Yeah, for sure. Picking up on those little, those little clues and hints. We always joke that every day is a puzzle, right? And you got to put all those pieces together. And often the guide that can put them together the quickest is the one you want rowing your boat.
Yeah. So you've opened up the Bighorn. You're able to fish out of the Bighorn now, which is a high quality versus quantity river. It doesn't have a lot of big brown trout in it, but you do have a chance at catching a monster. I'll show you that in a second. But here's a quick section on fishing the drop.
So Austin, we've seen 90% of our fish today come nosed right up to a drop. You're going to make a change. What are you doing?
That's correct. So I'm going to take this small PMD off, and I'm going to put a depth charge caddis on, and that caddis just has 2 beads on it. One of them's a tungsten, and that's going to help us get down faster over that drop, since that is going to be a crucial part of catching that fish on that, is because if we don't get down fast enough, we're not going to be in that zone.
Right, just going to go right over top.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
Okay.
A small downstream end of it. Good.
All right, we got a good one here, I think. The first one we've had in some of sort of this froggy water.
Yeah, most of those fish come out of that a little faster water.
Where are you going, dude? Whoa, that's a good rainbow.
In this slow water, it gets a chance to sit a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And heat up. Now this fish was on a seam out there, and it was a little bit deeper, and that's why we were fishing it. But yeah, and most of these fish today have definitely been in faster water.
But it doesn't mean you should not fish the slower stuff.
Sometimes people overlook that, and
they think it's froggy, right?
Exactly.
And they just paddle over it.
Exactly.
But you're right. These fish have all been quality fish, Austin. All quality fish. There we go.
Nice.
Nice. Good job.
Absolutely. Nice job. Nice
On
fish.
the worm again.
On the worm. He ate the worm. Beautiful, heavy fish.
Yeah, that's a thick one. I can barely get my hands around her. Oh my goodness. What a spectacular rainbow trout.
So the water was a little slower off that drop, but one of those situations where they're nosed right up, and to be able to have the confidence to cast in 4 inches of water and let that fly trickle down, and you really do risk hanging up every cast, but that's what you need to do to make it happen.
Yeah, there's some risk reward there, but it can be awesome when it works out, for sure.
We've got a question from Mike O'Connor. Are there any specific considerations that I should be aware of when planning a multi-day trip on the North Platte?
No, one of the more common questions, and I think we've covered it. So we kind of have 3 distinct different sections on the North Platte. That's a pretty frequently asked question we get from someone that's not familiar with the area. So it's all the North Platte, but the Miracle Mile, Fremont Canyon, and the Gray Reef stretch, all still the North Platte. But there's really no specific questions. We're relatively easy to get to. We're about 4.5 hours from Denver International Airport here in Casper that you can connect a flight into via Salt Lake or Denver. The lodge is 11 miles out of town. There's good public access. There's cool private water access. It's kind of got a little bit of everything.
We alluded to this big brown trout. You've got opportunities to hunt big fish, and every trip we've had, we've been fortunate enough to hook a big one. Over 20. I think last year was a 21, and this year was a 22. Talk a little bit about the brown trout fishery in the North Platte, conversely, and in the Bighorn, from Wedding down to Thermop.
Yeah. So the brown trout fishery on the North Platte, we see a higher number of them in the fall. They're just more active. They're getting ready to spawn, right? Pre-spawn, post-spawn. We definitely don't fish to them on the spawn, but we see a higher number of them there. The Miracle Mile has a much higher density of brown trout than the Gray Reef stretch does. But they're here, and we do see them, and we do find them, and often they're fish of a lifetime sort of caliber. The Bighorn has a little higher densities than the Gray Reef stretch as well, and grows some really robust stout fish that can be a lot of fun to chase. Like any fishery, there's some kind of ebb and flow with quality of fish year to year as far as overall size, and there seems like there's some weird years where we'll see multiple fish over 28 inches out of the shop, and then go a year or two without that, and then see it again. And it's not necessarily that those fish are dying off. It's just that we weren't fortunate enough to find them here or there. So
Right.
they're around, but like you said, it is unicorn hunting when you start talking of fish over 25 inches. They're here, but they're smart. They often break you off. They find a rock. They find a log. They don't get that size for being dumb, and they take advantage of it, and often try to pull some sort of tricks or tomfoolery to get to mess the whole thing up. Right? Charge the boat or whatever. It's interesting how they'll find a way to get loose.
So here's the big one from the Bighorn.
All right, so we're hooked up here to a nice big brown trout. As Austin said when we first got going, browns are not the dominant species in the Bighorn, but you do have a shot at catching them. And when you do get them, they're generally pretty big, and this one looks fantastic. Yeah! Woo! Oh my gosh,
What a
fish.
Oh. He ate that little pickpocket PMD too.
You did, right?
Yeah, he did. What a beautiful fish.
Oh my goodness. It always amazes me that the biggest fish of the day often takes the smallest fly on the rig, right?
Absolutely.
Just amazing. Okay. Clear this big boy of the rig, and now let's take a look at this giant. How do you like that? What a fantastically large, aggressive, wild brown.
So this is a close facsimile of the pickpocket PMD that we caught that fish on. It's more of a stonefly pattern, but it does emulate a PMD. And I think we were fishing a size 18, a tiny fly. You got the opportunity to catch giants there.
Yeah, that pickpocket's a real favorite. It's a great kind of PMD stonefly mix attractor sort of thing, and it's shocking how often it works in kind of those shallower flats or off those drops with a good rock shelf. They seem to be looking for that sort of bug more and more.
Right. One more question. Best carp fly for the North Platte?
Well,
Asking for a friend.
yeah.
That's all right. You can come to the dark side. It's all good.
Yeah. So it's there's a variety, but my go-to on all of our reservoirs around here is like a dumbbell-eyed clouser crawfish, in both kind of tan and white, and then there's a kind of tan and orange variation, like a burnt orange kind of cooked lobster sort of color scheme. That's really my go-to. That simple dumbbell. It varies a little bit depending on depth of the fish, right? If they're up in those flats and shallower than 3 feet of water, I'm usually throwing a bug that's relatively light and is pretty stealthy and doesn't spook them. But there's times at certain reservoirs around here, or even the reservoir that we showed footage from at Pathfinder, where they'll be on some of those rock edges and ledges, and I'll throw something with a serious dumbbell eye or cone head, and even some lead wrap underneath the material. So you can never go wrong with Mark Bonham's vanilla bugger as well. Mark's a huge he's kind of the godfather of carping around here, and that thing, it is dynamite for carp as well. You can find those on our website and a bunch of others, and it's a real go-to, and the trout love it as well. It really emulates a small, white silverish minnow. I think often they eat it as cotton seeds and that sort of thing, depending on how heavy or how deep you're fishing it. But,
right.
Yeah.
Josh Reed. Not that one because I can't answer that one, but this one I can. Or I can ask you to. On the mile, do the fish stage in the slack water before they come up to spawn?
Yeah, it really follows the same sort of rules as any other fishery. They'll hang back and hang to the deeper water and then move up into the super shallow pea gravel size sort of stuff when they're actively spawning. Like most people, the conservation aspect of trying not to harass them when they're on the spawn, let those fish be. We all want to catch fish in the future, and we want our kids to catch fish in the future and enjoy the resource. And sometimes, the unfortunate nature is the instant gratification of catching one of those fish on a spawning bed. You'll see some people trying to target them. We've probably all done it at some point, but we all try to discourage people of doing it if possible. And, hopefully the education is kind of the way to do that.
Yeah, let them do their business. Josh, I cannot answer the question about the reef. How does the reef compare to the Bow? Because I've never fished the Bow River, to be honest with you. I'm sorry to say, but one day I will for sure. I've got one more video to show, and this was the biggest fish we've caught in 2 years, rainbow anyway, with your fantastic guide, Ty Halleck, also a wonderful artist. There are some fish in the North Platte that have escaped from hatchery years ago. We happened to catch one of those fish today, but you have to realize that fish escaped when it was this big, right? So this is what the big fish of the North Platte can end up looking like.
A lot of times, especially in the summer, they'll sit in that kind of faster water and ambush stuff because there's a lot more oxygen right there for them. So they sit in that fast water, getting oxygen, and then they're trying to feed.
So this is streamer fishing. Whoa, that's a donkey. This is streamer fishing. Fishing for unicorns. It's a low percentage game, but if you can hook up, chances are they're going to be good. And this one is big rainbow. Now Ty's got a little fly called a red-headed stepchild on here, and we've got a crawdad trailer on it. Looks like he took the top fly. Oh, that's a big fish, man. That's a really good fish. And that's the thing about, fishing these streamers here on the North Platte is you really are trophy hunting. And this, I can absolutely say, is the biggest rainbow of the trip. Wow, unbelievable. So if you put in your time throw a ton of streamers, a ton of casts, you'll be duly rewarded. Let's take a look at this guy. You can't even get your hands on
I can't even
him.
get my hand around it.
How do you like that? Oh my heavens, what an absolute giant rainbow. Good fish. Stud rainbow trout. See you, buddy. Ty.
Nice, dude.
Absolutely awesome. So streamer fishing on the North Platte, put in your time and you will win.
That's the fly, the red-headed stepchild. It's hard to believe that a fat sack of fat like that rainbow could get so fat eating that stuff, huh?
Yeah, I think when they get to that size, they're not too picky, right? It's anything that comes by. It's like me approaching, I don't really want to eat a salad bar, but when I approach it, I'll probably still eat it, right? It comes by.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, you know what? We've talked a lot about unicorn hunting. We fished four or 5 days with ugly bug and crazy rainbow fly fishing, and we caught 3 unicorns. We caught that giant brown, we caught that giant rainbow, and we caught that really nice, that you have to look at the show to see, that Bear River cutthroat trout. But we also caught a ton of other fish. The fishing out of Casper, Wyoming is absolutely fantastic. And you know what? If anybody wants to do it, you got to hook up with Blake and make it happen. Blake, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, number one? And for booking, what do you recommend? How far in advance?
Best way to get in touch with us is pretty simple. You can shoot us an email, info@crazyrainbow. You can go to our website. There's all kinds of ways to inquire about more information or send us communication that way. You can give us a call here at the shop. That's 307-234-6905 is the phone number here. You can reach out multiple ways. We're somewhat unique. If you're looking for lodging, we have a tendency to get pretty booked up at times there. If you're looking for a specific guide, obviously the sooner the better. But we have a pretty healthy guide staff, pretty large guide staff, and we do our best to accommodate you and make it work kind of, however it does. Obviously with COVID times, that sort of thing, people, are planning. It seems like some people are planning a lot further in advance, and then other people are kind of waiting until the last minute, but we do our darndest to take care of you every way possible. Awesome.
Well, thank you very much for having us on, or allowing us to invade your shop during your off time. I really appreciate it, Blake. It's I know you guys work all hours of the day and night to satisfy your clientele from all over the world. If you want to fish the North Platte or fish out of Sheridan or out of Casper, Wyoming, be sure to hook up with the Ugly Bug Fly Fishing and Crazy Rainbow Lodge. If you're looking for an international adventure when things open up, Blake's the guy to go to. I can't wait to fish Bolivia with you, man. Like, I really can't. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And if there's anything else you want to add, now's your time, man.
No, just thanks to all those who were checking it out, watching, and being involved. And hopefully, if the Ugly Bug or Crazy Rainbow can help you guys out, you give us a ring.
Absolutely. All right. So coming up, we've got another new Fly Fisher Live coming up next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It is with Calm Waters Fly Fishing. It is a Southern Ontario brown trout fishery, so be sure to check that out. If you're interested in what we have coming up on the new Fly Fisher, we air, I should say, first of all, your show airs this Saturday at noon Eastern Time on YouTube, so you can check that out, the full-length episode, which is almost an hour long. It's 57 minutes long of fantastic fishing out of Casper, Wyoming, on the New Fly Fisher website, New Fly or YouTube channel, excuse me. So check that out for sure. And for a highlight of what else is coming up this season, take a look at this.
Oh my gosh, that was awesome. There were two fish fighting for it. Both came and broke the surface, and then this one just hammered the fly. Ready and go. Oh wow.
Nice.
That is absolutely wicked.
So Chris has spotted and got me into first fish. We've seen some others. We just saw 6 go by us. There he goes. That was outstanding. And you know, the best part was getting him on a bomber. Like, that was awesome. Took 3 or 4 casts, got it in there. Chris helped me, boom, fish on.
It's a fish factory, it's a food factory. There's a lot of different ways to fish the river. It's just cool. It's you know, it's a pretty amazing place.
How do you like that 22-inch brown trout on a pheasant tail waiting in Montana? Nice. All right, so we're hooked up here to a nice big brown trout. Browns are not the dominant species in the Bighorn, but you do have a shot at catching them. And when you do get them, they're generally pretty big, and this one looks fantastic. Yeah! Woo! How do you like that? What a fantastically large, aggressive, wild brown.
Adam had me thrown into the back, slowly stripping, and then dropping it off the legs. We saw the fish roll up in behind it. We slowed down the presentation and smash. Big old smallie.
Oh my gosh, it's a giant.
That's a tank. This is the reason we make the drives. This might be my personal best, boys. That might be my personal best.
He's got it. I got it. Sweet.
Big fish.
How's that?
That's a big pike.
That is a monster. Oh my goodness. Yes! Can you believe this?
That is a big pike.
Thanks, sweetheart. What an unbelievable animal. Rob, is that your biggest northern?
That is my biggest northern.
Congratulations,
Thanks,
buddy.
man.
Ah! That's a stud.
Nice fish.
That's a big fish,
That's
man.
a nice one.
Nice. You had just said, too, we're going to pull a big one out of here.
Yeah, we're gonna find another nice one right in here somewhere.
All right.
There he is.
Great fish.
What a dandy, huh?
Yeah.